Thank you. Mr. Secretary, good afternoon. As you both know, a U.S. soldier crossed the border into North Korea today after having been released from South Korea prison. Can you tell us what you know about this case right now? Are the North Koreans forcibly detaining this soldier? Are you concerned about what security breach this could represent? And for General Milley, there have been a recent increase in the number of very aggressive incidents over Syria involving Russia. What do you think has caused this? Is this a result, do you think, of the Ukraine war, pressure on Russia? And does the U.S. need to send more assets to that area?
Well, thanks, Lita. Good afternoon. Yeah, what I can confirm, and I would say up front that we're very early in this event, and so there's a lot that we're still trying to learn. But what we do know is that one of our service members who was on a tour willfully and without authorization crossed the Military Demarcation Line. We believe that he is in DPRK custody. And so we're closely monitoring and investigating the situation and working to notify the soldiers next of kin and engaging to address this incident. In terms of my concerns, I'm absolutely foremost concerned about the welfare of our troop. And so we will remain focused on this, and again, this will develop in the next several days and hours, and we'll keep you posted. So.
And later on the Syria piece, there is a bit of an uptick, but I wouldn't overstate it too much. I think that our forces have adequate rules of engagement and authorities provided to defend themselves. And the second thing is we have a deconfliction channel. I think you're aware of that. We have a deconfliction channel that CENTCOM operates on a day-to-day basis in order to prevent any sort of incident or escalation. We're monitoring it very closely. As to the reason why the little bit of an uptick, I'm not really certain. We've got analysts trying to figure that out. I don't know if it's connected to Ukraine or not. Right now, there's nothing to suggest that it is. But we are adequately protected, and our focus is always on our own force protection.
Does the U.S. need to put more forces in that region, considering a lot have been shifted to Asia?
We've got adequate capabilities to defend ourselves.
All right, thank you. Second question will go to Idris Ali with Reuters.
Thank you. Chairman Milley, we're now entering the 5th week of the counteroffensive, sort of going into the 6th week, and you publicly have talked about, as have others in the U.S. government, about how the counteroffensive is going slower than expected. I appreciate the realities of the front lines, the mines, and the situation there, but has the counteroffensive stalled, and how is this not a failure so far? And Secretary Austin, you talked about the alliance and the contact group being together, but publicly there seems to be a bit of fraying. Defense Minister Wallace last week said that he had told his Ukrainian counterparts that, quote unquote, we are not Amazon, and that they should show some appreciation. Do you agree with the sentiments that Secretary Wallace expressed? And what exactly do the Ukrainians need to sort of break the front lines in the security zone and make the progress that you had expected them to make?
Well, first, thanks, Idris. And I'll answer first, and then the chairman can chime in. You know, we're just back from the summit in Vilnius, and what I witnessed in Vilnius was indeed unity and cohesion in every meeting that I sat in, and so it's the same thing that I witnessed today as I talked to ministers of defense and chiefs of defense. That unity is still there. There's no question that we have provided Ukraine a lot. We, the international coalition, Ukraine is in a fight, and we have to remember that when you're in a fight, you want everything that you can get your hands on, and so that's to be expected. Ben Wallace and I have worked along with coalition partners over the last year or so on this particular issue, and Ben has done a lot to to enable and to help the Ukrainian military. And so he's been a great partner. But again, I continue to see unity and cohesion. I continue to hear ministers say that we're going to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. And I heard their leaders say the same thing in Vilnius last week. This is it's about much more than just Ukraine. This is about the rules-based international order. And I think people realize that. People around the globe realize that. And, it's about the ability of a country to protect its sovereign territory. And so there is an interest across the globe, around the globe, to ensure that Ukraine can be successful in defending its sovereign territory.
So I would say a couple things. First of all, the Russians have had several months to put in a very complex defense in-depth, a linear defense in-depth. It's not quite connected trench lines like World War I, but it's not dissimilar from that either. Lots of complex minefields, dragon's teeth, barbed wire, trenches, etc. They've got a very extensive security zone in depth, and then they've got at least 2, perhaps even 3 main defensive belts. So they've had a long time to prepare that. Now, they suffered a lot of casualties, the Russians did, to date. So they've also done that mobilization, from months ago. So the troops that are manning those Russian lines are poorly trained, poorly equipped. Their sustainment logistics is not high. Their morale is low. And now recently, because of the Prigozhin mutiny, the command and control apparatus at the strategic level is certainly confusing at best and probably challenging in many, many other ways. At the operational and tactical level, they've had significant casualties among their officer corps. But in addition to that, the recent events of Prigozhin has also led to, and you're reporting it in the media, about various folks being replaced. So the Russian situation is not very good, even though they've been fighting a fight because of the minefields. What the Ukrainians have, though, is a significant amount of combat power not yet committed. And I will not say what's going to happen in the future, because that's going to be a Ukrainian decision as to where and when they commit their reserve, etc. Right now, they are preserving their combat power, and they are slowly and deliberately and steadily working their way through all these minefields. And it's a tough fight. It's a very difficult fight. It started about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and the various war games that were done ahead of time have predicted certain levels of advance, and that has slowed down. Why? Because that's the difference between war on paper and real war. These are real people in real machines that are out there really clearing real minefields, and they're really dying. So when that happens, units tend to slow down, and that's rightly so, in order to survive, in order to get through these minefields. So they're working their way through it. It is far from a failure, in my view. I think that it's way too early to make that kind of call. I think there's a lot of fighting left to go, and I'll stay with what we've said before. This is going to be long, it's going to be hard, it's going to be bloody, and at the end of the day, we'll see where the Ukrainians end up vis-a-vis the Russians.
And Eders, let me just tag on to what the chairman said. I absolutely agree with everything the chairman said. But I would remind you that this is not over. We continue to generate combat power, training and equipping 3 brigades in Germany right now, and there's other training ongoing around the region, as the chairman pointed out earlier. Countries continue to provide platforms. We talked about the additional Leopards and infantry fighting vehicles that are on the horizon, as well as artillery pieces. And so we're going to continue to generate combat power. We're going to continue to push in additional Bradley fighting vehicles and also Strykers and artillery pieces, and you heard the chairman mention that earlier. So our work continues, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that Ukrainians can be successful.
All right, thank you. Third question will go to Missy Ryan at the Washington Post.
I have 2 Ukraine-related questions following up on Idris's. First, Secretary Austin, for you, I wanted to follow up on the G7 statement that came out last week regarding the framework for providing security assurances to Ukraine. President Biden has publicly referenced the Israel MOU model. Do you believe that, is there a possibility that the United States could help Ukraine achieve or secure some sort of parallel qualitative military edge, or could the United States provide a mutual defense agreement to Ukraine as part of that security assurance? And do you expect that it's politically feasible to have the kind of agreement that we have with Israel for Ukraine? And then for you, Chairman Milley, Ukrainian military leaders have said how grateful they are for U.S. support, but at the same time, the various leaders, including General Zaluzhny, who you talk to regularly, have said that they don't think it's reasonable for the United States to be, for Ukraine, to be conducting this kind of major offensive, and especially do combined arms maneuvers without the ability to have greater air power and provide air support to the troops. And they say, NATO would never dream of asking its forces to do that, even given the Russian air defense system that's there. What is your response to that? And can you help us sort of walk us through your thinking about why Ukraine is able and should be able to conduct this offensive without the greater air power that some of the Ukrainian leaders are asking for? Thank you.
Thanks, Missy. I counted about 12 questions, but we'll do our best to get to. First, on the agreement with Ukraine, we can expect, and you saw evidence of this with the G7 announcement at the end of the Vilnius summit, we can expect that countries will execute bilateral agreements with Ukraine going forward, and certainly we will as well. And that's a work in progress. But I would tell you, our part of that, the chairman and I are focused on not only making sure that Ukraine has what it needs to be successful today, but we also have to make sure that they have a capability to defend themselves in the future and to deter aggression in the future. So while we're doing what's necessary to make sure that they can be successful today, we're also going to have to work with allies and partners to build a future force. And so that's a hard work that's got to happen. And right now we're kind of at that point where we're doing both simultaneously. So you see that in some cases we've invested in some things that because they have to be produced, they won't materialize until a couple of months down the road, or in some cases a year down the road. But those kinds of things help provide the capability that Ukraine is going to need in the future. So the core of any agreement will be their ability to defend themselves and deter aggression. They've got to have the combat power to do that, and that's what we're focused on. And then around that, the bilateral agreement will certainly be formed. And this is going to have to be work that nations take on together, not one nation alone. And so I look forward to working with my colleagues and working with state and other foreign ministers to develop the way ahead for Ukraine.
So Missy, I offered two things. One is, what's the military problem to solve here with the air power? And it's control of the airspace. And you can do that two ways. You can do that air to air, or you can do that from the ground to the air. In terms of the most effective and efficient and cost-effective way to do that right now for the Ukrainians is from ground to air, through air defense systems. And that's what they've been provided from the beginning of this war till now. And that's important because what you want to do is protect those assault forces from Russian close air support and or attack helicopter support. And they've got air defense systems, the Ukrainians do, that can do that. The casualties that the Ukrainians are suffering on this offensive are not so much from Russian air power, they're from minefields. Minefields that are covered with direct fire from anti-tank hunter killer teams, that sort of thing. So it's minefields. So the problem to solve is minefields, not the air piece right this minute. And that's what the coalition is trying to provide them, additional mine clearing, MICLICs, line charges, Bangalores, that sort of thing, in order to continue to work their way through the minefields. So I'm confident that they can do this, and especially if they execute the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they've been taught, which they are doing, and execute these operations at night, which would deny the Russians the ability to use any of their air power anyway. So the real problem is the minefields. It's not right now the air power. Now, having said that, just do a quick math drill here. 10 F-16s are $2 billion. So the Russians have hundreds of fourth and fifth generation airframes. So if they're going to try to match the Russians 1 for 1 or even 2 to 1, You're talking about a large number of aircraft. That's going to take years to train the pilots, years to do the maintenance and sustainment, years to generate that degree of financial support to do that. You're talking way more billions of dollars than has already been generated. So the key thing is to focus on air defense, focus on the blocking and tackling sort of offensive combined arms maneuver, which is artillery, and both long-range and short-range artillery, and then get in your engineers and your mine-breaching equipment. That's the kind of stuff they need. That's what they want. That's what they're asking for. When I talk to Zaluzny, that's what he's asking for. So,
Final question will go to Jennifer Griffin with Fox News.
Defense Secretary Austin, I'd like to ask you about Senator Tuberville's hold on military nominations. Are you prepared to meet him halfway? And isn't the current policy in violation of the spirit of the Hyde Amendment, even if technically you're not paying for abortions, you're paying for travel for potential abortions? And General Milley, you say that you have enough assets in the Middle East to counter Russia, to deter Russia, but last week Russian planes loitered over the Atanf base where U.S. military personnel are based, and just today, almost daily, they are countering U.S. military aircraft, including a manned aircraft today. Why can't you deter Russia in the Middle East?
well, go ahead, Secretary, you can answer the first one. I'll take the second one.
Thanks, Chairman.
What do you do, Jen?
Jennifer, I think we have to keep things in perspective. 1 in 5 of my troops, our troops, are women. They don't get a chance to pick where they're assigned. They're serving their country. They're sacrificing each and every day. And they deserve, in my view, and in the view of our leadership, they deserve to have access to non-covered reproductive health care. And that's what this policy does. It focuses on health care, non-reproductive health care, which includes other things like IVF and some other things. So it's important that that our troops, our women, understand that we care about them, that we understand that they don't get a chance to choose where they're assigned, and so this policy helps them maintain access to that health care. And the importance, the health and welfare of my troops is really, really important to me, and we're going to continue to do what's necessary to ensure that they have that access. And I know Senator Tuberville has said that it's illegal. It's not illegal, and we've made that point a number of times. We point to the fact that there's an opinion that's posted on the DOJ's public-facing website that really details this issue. And so this is a readiness issue. The fact that Senator Tuberville maintains this hold on the promotions of our senior officers, it cascades, it creates friction throughout the entire chain. It disadvantages families. You've heard us talk about the impact of that, and so I would ask Senator Tuberville to lift his hold. And as you think about this, Jennifer, I would imagine our adversaries would look at something like this and be pretty happy that we create this kind of turbulence within our force.
So, Jennifer, as I said before, we have rules of engagement. Our pilots are extraordinarily well trained. They're empowered. The chains of command are empowered. The Secretary has granted the authorities necessary for them to defend themselves. If at any point in time any of our troops sense that there's a hostile act, a hostile intent, they will protect themselves. So that's point one. Secondly, if there's unsafe or unprofessional acts, that's a different issue. We try to work that out through the deconfliction channel that's done at the tactical level so that we don't have an inadvertent air-to-air accident or incident. But I am quite confident that General Kurilla and all the forces in CENTCOM know how to protect themselves and will protect themselves.
But it doesn't seem to be stopping the Russians.
Well, it's not going to stop them from flying in the airspace, that's for sure. But if they're hostile act, hostile intent, or if they're acting unsafely or unprofessionally, then we'll work through that. But we will protect ourselves if there's any sort of challenge in that regard.
All right, thank you, Secretary Austin and General Milley. That's all the time we have. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody.